Welcome to The Explainer. I'm so glad you're here today because we are tackling a topic that literally touches every single one of us, our brains, and more specifically, how they age. For decades, there's been this really heavy, pervasive assumption that cognitive decline is just this sad, inevitable result of growing older, or maybe just bad genetics. You know, you just cross your fingers and hope for the best, right? Well, today we're throwing that assumption right out the window. By looking at some incredible recent medical data, we're going to unlock a concept from the source material that is truly empowering. We are talking about the heart-brain axis. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the reality of brain aging, move into the heart-brain connection, break down life's essential 8, drill down into daily habits, and finally, look at taking control.
So, is cognitive decline entirely out of your hands? It's a very real, universal anxiety we all share about aging and conditions like dementia. We all have those moments where we feel a little less sharp than we used to, and honestly, it's scary. But what if I told you that a massive portion of this is entirely within your control? Okay, let's dive into this and flip the script from fear to scientific agency.
Section 1. The reality of brain aging.
To really understand how to protect our brains, we first need to bust a few common misconceptions. Aging itself is a risk factor. Sure, but it's just the canvas. It is absolutely not the whole story. Let's clear up some medical jargon right out of the gate, because these terms get used interchangeably all the time, and they really shouldn't be. Dementia is an umbrella term. It's a broad syndrome describing impairments in your daily life related to memory or thinking. Alzheimer's disease, on the other hand, is a very specific pathology under that umbrella. It's characterized by abnormal proteins we call plaques and tangles. Understanding this difference is step 1.
Section 2. The heart-brain connection. Now, this is where the science gets incredibly exciting. Think about it. We hear about a gut-brain axis, a kidney-brain axis, but the heart-brain axis, that is paramount. Why? Because our vascular system is literally the vital fuel line for the brain itself. When we look at what doctors actually find in the brains of those diagnosed with clinical Alzheimer's, you might think it's just pure Alzheimer's pathology, just those plaques and tangles. But pure Alzheimer's is rarely the sole culprit. It is far more common to find a mixed pathology. The most frequent reality is Alzheimer's disease combined with vascular disease, or running alongside Lewy body disease. So the crucial takeaway is this. Vascular disease, the health of your blood vessels, is the single most modifiable risk factor in that mix. If we fix the vascular side, we dramatically reduce the overall burden on the brain.
And we have to acknowledge that this vascular risk isn't distributed perfectly evenly. Massive, long-term studies like the Framingham Heart Study and Kaiser data show us very clear systemic risk factors. For instance, the prevalence of vascular disease is higher in Black and Hispanic populations. Geographically, there's even a stroke belt spanning from the Carolinas out to Arkansas, where stroke rates are mysteriously high. But the data makes it clear. These disparities aren't about some biological inability to respond to treatments. They're largely driven by structural issues, like a lack of access to early diagnosis and consistent care. It's a powerful reminder that our environment and our access to healthcare matter just as much as our biology.
Section 3. Life's essential 8.
So if vascular health is the absolute key to protecting our brains, how exactly do we optimize it? Enter a framework recently updated by the American Heart Association. They call it Life's Essential 8. These are totally actionable factors: managing blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar, weight, diet, sleep, exercise, and quitting smoking. You don't have to be perfect at every single one of these, but actively managing them reduces the overall injury effects on your brain. You are, quite literally, actively building a shield.
Let's zero in on blood pressure for a second, because the data here is incredibly specific. A systolic blood pressure, that's the top number, between 120 and 130 is the absolute sweet spot for long-term brain health. Decades ago, doctors might have shrugged at a reading of 155, but today we know that getting that number into the 120 to 130 range is a total game changer for reducing stroke and dementia risk. But here is a highly practical tip coming directly from the researchers. Check your blood pressure at home. So many of us suffer from white coat syndrome. You go to the doctor, you're a little nervous, and your reading artificially inflates. To get a truly accurate picture of your vascular health, measure it in your own living room, at peace for a month. Section 4. Diet, sleep, and exercise. Let's shift our focus to everyday, non-intimidating habits. Diet is critical here. The science strongly points to the DASH, MIND, or Mediterranean diets, focusing heavily on whole foods, berries, nuts, and legumes.
And on the flip side, we really have to be aware of highly processed foods. And I'm not just talking about the obvious fast food burgers. You've got to be careful of the hidden culprits. Researchers note that sodium easily sneaks into that innocent-looking bowl of afternoon soup, and sugar is notoriously hiding out in your ketchup and tomato sauce. The rule of thumb, keep it simple, keep it whole.
Next up is sleep. Let's bust a major myth right now. How many of you think 6 hours of sleep is plenty? Well, the scientific data says otherwise. The optimal sleep duration is a very specific 8 to 8.5 hours. It operates on a U-shaped curve. Too little is bad, too much isn't great either, but 8 to 8.5 is the true biological sweet spot for brain maintenance.
And it's not just about duration, it's about quality, specifically oxygenation. With obstructive sleep apnea, what mechanically happens is the tongue, which is a massive muscle, relaxes, falls back, and physically blocks your airway. You literally stop getting oxygen. Here's the fascinating detail. Many people wake up with a headache, they drag themselves to the kitchen, drink a coffee, and the headache fades. They think it was just a coffee withdrawal headache. In reality, it was an oxygen deprivation headache from sleep apnea that faded as they woke up and started breathing normally again.
So how do we actually fix our sleep hygiene? First, cool down your room. Cold rooms are proven to help. Second, treat underlying conditions like heart failure or anemia, which are known to disrupt sleep. But crucially, avoid alcohol and sedatives. It is such a common mistake to get on a long airplane flight, have a few drinks, or pop a sedative thinking you're just going to sleep it off. That is actually devastating for your sleep architecture and your brain's oxygenation.
Let's talk exercise. If you hate the gym, I have great news for you. You do not need to be a marathon runner. Getting just 5,000 steps a day, which is about 2 miles, or roughly 30 minutes of walking, makes a massive difference. The biggest brain benefits actually happen when you go from doing absolutely nothing to doing just this manageable baseline.
Section 5. Taking control. Let's look at the overarching timeline of how you can intervene, both individually and systemically. The best part? It is never too early and never too late to build cognitive resilience. In early life, the greatest shield is education. Giving children the gift of knowledge physically builds brain resilience. In midlife, it's all about managing blood pressure, fighting off social isolation, and even minimizing exposure to air pollution. And in late life, staying deeply engaged in your community keeps those neural pathways firing. For those of you specifically managing diabetes, keeping your hemoglobin A1C strictly below 7 and ideally below 6 is your golden rule. By controlling your blood sugar, you are directly protecting those critical vascular fuel lines that keep your brain healthy and vibrant.
And while individual choices are vital, we also have to step back and acknowledge the bigger picture. Public health matters immensely. Social determinants, healthcare access, and public policy directly dictate the brain health options available to whole communities. Supporting broad public health initiatives at the ballot box, things like ensuring clean air, better healthcare access, and stronger communities is essential for improving society's collective brain health.
I want to give you a little piece of homework, but trust me, it's the good kind. Go to mlc.heart.org. This is a tool designed to let you calculate your own personal cardiovascular health maintenance score based on life's essential aid. It takes all the guesswork out and shows you exactly where you stand, color-coded in green, yellow, or red. Go find out your score. I want to leave you with this incredibly empowering quote, straight from the source material. The treatment of vascular risk factors is the one thing you can do today, no matter where you are in your life. Whether you're 25, 55, or 85, you have practical agency over your cognitive destiny. It's not just up to fate.
So, I want you to genuinely ask yourself right now, what is one vascular risk factor you can modify today? Is it going for a 30-minute walk? Is it skipping that salty processed soup? Or is it finally scheduling that doctor's appointment to check your A1C? You've got the tools, you have the knowledge, and now it's time to take control. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.